Everyone walked past the CEO as if he were invisible, until a humble little girl stopped beside him and did the unthinkable. "Hi, how are you? Before I begin, I want to thank my amazing subscribers for their support. Yvonne, thank you for supporting me. Becky, your presence here is very special to me. Now enjoy the story and comment on where you're watching from." The morning Marcus Whitfield's wheelchair died, he was running 12 minutes late to a meeting that could determine the future of his company. He had navigated downtown Chicago's streets 100 times before. The cracked sidewalks, the aggressive lunch crowds, the delivery trucks that always parked exactly where they shouldn't. At 30 years old, Marcus had learned to move through the world in a way that demanded nothing from it. He didn't ask for help. He never had. His mother used to say he came out of the womb already solving his own problems. But on that Tuesday morning in October, right in the middle of the intersection of Michigan and Wacker, his electric wheelchair sputtered, groaned, and went completely silent. Just like that. No warning, no final beep. Just stillness, and the crosswalk light counting down, 42 seconds, glowing red above him, and Marcus sitting perfectly motionless in the center of 4 lanes of traffic that would roar back to life the instant that light turned green. He pressed the joystick. Nothing. He pressed harder. Nothing. Come on, he thought. 31 seconds. To his left, 3 businessmen in dark suits stood at the corner, briefcases in hand, eyes buried in their phones. One of them glanced up, locked eyes with Marcus for exactly 1 second, and looked back down. 20 seconds. He raised his hand. "Hey, excuse me, can someone—" A woman in a beige trench coat walked directly past him, close enough that her coat brushed his armrest. Her heels clicked sharply against the pavement. She didn't turn her head. 15 seconds. A security guard stepped out from the shopping complex on the corner. He crossed his arms. He looked directly at Marcus, straight at him, no question, and then deliberately rotated his body toward the opposite street, as though something far more fascinating had appeared in that direction. 10 seconds. Marcus felt something he almost never allowed himself to feel. Helplessness. Not the manageable, frustrated kind he'd spent his whole life converting into fuel. The other kind. The kind that settles into the chest like a cold stone and doesn't move. 5 seconds. He closed his eyes, and then he heard it. Small sneakers. The squeaky kind. The kind worn by children who have run too many miles in shoes just a little too worn. Stopping right beside him on the asphalt. "Mister, your chair isn't moving." He opened his eyes. She was 7 years old, maybe, with blonde hair pulled into 2 uneven pigtails and cheeks pink from the October cold. Her eyes were the color of a late summer sky, clear and direct in the way only a child's eyes can be, before the world teaches them to look away. She was clutching a small tin can against her chest, the kind used for collecting coins. "No," Marcus said quietly. "It's not." The light turned green. The horns hadn't started yet, just that first heartbeat of green, and this little girl set her tin can down on the curb, walked directly behind his wheelchair, and pushed. She was 7 years old. He was a grown man. The chair was heavy and the asphalt was not flat, and the distance to the curb was longer than it looked. But she pushed with every ounce of her small body. Sneakers squeaking and scraping, face tight with pure, wordless determination. And she did not stop until the wheels rolled up onto the sidewalk on the other side. The entire intersection had gone still. The businessmen. The woman in the trench coat. A mother with a stroller who had just stepped off the bus. Even the security guard who had looked away. All of them standing motionless on opposite corners, watching this child do the thing that none of them had been willing to do. Several of them had tears on their faces. The little girl picked her tin can back up from the curb where she'd left it, checked that the coins were still inside, and turned to look at Marcus with that same matter-of-fact expression. "Are you okay?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. He was looking at her coat, thin, far too thin for October. At her left shoe, where a small hole sat near the toe. At the tin can she clutched to her chest as though it were the most precious thing she owned. He could hear, faintly, the few coins rattling inside it. "What's your name?" he finally asked. "Cora," she said simply. "Cora Bellamy." She gave him one last serious look. Then she turned and walked into the crowd, her small figure vanishing between tall coats and briefcases, the tin can swinging at her side. Marcus sat very still. He didn't know yet that Cora had eaten almost nothing that morning. He didn't know her mother was home beneath a thin blanket, shaking with fever, without a single dollar for medicine. He didn't know that her 3-year-old brother Jasper was sitting on the kitchen floor right now, waiting for his sister to come home, his small stomach empty. He didn't know any of that. But something had shifted inside him, something quiet and permanent and impossible to undo. And Marcus Whitfield, the man who had built an empire by needing nothing from anyone, pulled out his phone and called his assistant. "Find her," he said. "A little girl, blonde, around 7 years old. She was just at Michigan and Wacker." His voice was steadier than he felt. "Her last name is Bellamy." There was a pause on the line. "Sir? What do you need her for?" Marcus looked out at the intersection, now flowing again with indifferent traffic, as if nothing had happened, as if a child hadn't just done what a crowd of adults had refused to do. "I don't know yet," he said quietly. But that wasn't entirely true. His assistant's name was Diane, and she was very good at her job. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, she had placed a single sheet of paper on Marcus's desk. He picked it up without a word. Cora Bellamy, age 7. Enrolled at Garfield Elementary on the west side. Mother, Renata Bellamy, age 31, single parent, apartment 4C, 1180 North Loomis Street. Diane had added a handwritten note at the bottom. Utilities past due. Eviction notice filed 18 days ago. No active employment on record for 6 weeks. Marcus set the paper down. He turned his chair toward the window and looked out at Chicago, beautiful from up here, clean lines and glittering glass. Down at street level, where a 7-year-old girl pushed strangers' wheelchairs across intersections while her mother lay sick and her brother waited hungry, it was a different picture entirely. He thought about the tin can, the few coins rattling inside it. Diane appeared in his doorway. "Should I prepare a donation? The community fund?" "No." His voice was quiet but definite. "Get me a car." "You're 4 o'clock with Meridian. Reschedule it." She didn't argue. She picked up the phone, and Marcus rolled toward the elevator with the paper folded in his jacket pocket and something unfamiliar shifting in his chest. The last time he'd felt this particular pull, gravity reoriented. He'd been 19, newly paralyzed, watching his mother cry for the first time in his life. She hadn't cried when his father left, hadn't cried when they lost the house. But she cried then, and Marcus had made a quiet, undramatic decision. I will build something, so that no one who loves me ever has to make that face again. He had been building ever since. The car moved through downtown traffic. Marcus unfolded the paper once more. Eviction notice filed 18 days ago. 11 days left before the locks changed. 11 days before Cora had nowhere to come home to. And on a morning when that clock was already counting down, Cora had stopped at a broken wheelchair and pushed. Something cold and productive was forming in his chest, the kind of fury he'd learned to convert into action. "How long until we get there?" he asked. 20 minutes, Mr. Whitfield." 20 minutes was enough to plan. He had learned long ago that the most important meeting was the one where someone's whole life hung in the balance and they didn't know you were coming. He didn't know yet what he would find at that door. Didn't know that Renata Bellamy would look at him with eyes that reminded him, with an almost physical shock, of someone from his past. He would find that out soon enough. The building at 1180 North Loomis had once been something people were proud to live in. You could see it in the bones, carved stone lintel, wide staircase, arched entryway. The elevator had been out for months, A handwritten sign, faded, confirmed what everyone already knew. Marcus wheeled to apartment 4C and knocked, waited. A small voice from behind the door, too young to be Cora's. "Who is it?" Marcus softened his voice. "My name's Marcus. Is your sister home yet?" Shuffling. Then a woman's voice, strained, further inside. "Jasper, don't—" "Ma'am, your daughter helped me this morning on Michigan Avenue. I just want to talk." A long pause. Then the chain slid. The door opened. Renata Bellamy was 31 and looked like she'd been carrying 31 years all at once. Fever-bright eyes, pale skin, hair damp at the temples. She gripped the doorframe and looked at Marcus with something more complicated than fear. "Cora isn't here," she said. "I know, I came to see you." He held her gaze. "Can I come in?" "Why?" Not a question. A wall. "Because your daughter is the bravest person I've met in a very long time. And because you're about to tell me you're fine, and I'd like to have that argument somewhere warmer." Something shifted in her eyes. She unhooked the chain. The apartment was small and scrupulously clean. Swept floors, crayon drawings on the refrigerator, suns and stick figures, and a yellow house. Jasper sat in the middle of the living room clutching a toy truck, watching Marcus with enormous dark eyes. "Hi," Marcus said. Jasper held the truck out, then pulled it back. "That's a good truck," Marcus said. Renata had lowered herself onto the arm of the couch, working hard to look like this didn't cost her. She said she didn't do anything unusual, just helped someone. She did. He glanced around, the single blanket on the couch, the empty bowl, the heating vent making no sound. Does she do that often? A tired, genuine smile. Every chance she gets. Then, "What do you want, Mr. Whitfield?" "I want to know if you're seeing a doctor." The smile disappeared. "I'm fine." "When did you last eat something?" The pause was its own answer. Marcus placed his card on the coffee table. "A doctor will come here this afternoon. You don't have to let him in, but I'm sending one." He looked at her steadily. "Groceries before 6. That's not a negotiation. I'm just telling you what's going to happen. I don't take charity." Flat. Brittle. The voice of someone who'd said this before. "I know you don't. This is a debt to your daughter. Argue with me later, when you can stand without holding the furniture." Then, sneakers squeaking in the hallway, a key in the lock. Cora walked in, saw Marcus and stopped, looked at him, looked at her mother, then with total composure. "You came." "I did." "I didn't think you would." A pause. Grown-ups usually don't. Marcus had no answer for that, because she was right. "What were you collecting for?" He nodded toward the tin can. She glanced at her mother. "Medicine, for Mama." He heard Renata's breath catch. "You can keep those coins," he said softly. "Everyone. You earned them." Something cracked gently in the room. Not breaking, just shifting. Renata sat fully onto the couch for the first time all day and pressed her hand over her mouth. She looked like a mother who had been very afraid for a very long time, and who had just, against all expectation, been found. The doctor Diane sent was named Dr. Elaine Park, warm, efficient, the kind who didn't make patients feel small. She arrived at 4:15. By evening, Diane confirmed, respiratory infection, going on 2 weeks, antibiotics. She'd be fine. Marcus was back at his desk. "Who's the landlord?" Diane placed a second sheet down. "A management company, 40 buildings, lawyers on retainer, counting on tenants who couldn't afford to fight back. Get me a housing attorney," he said. "The kind their lawyers don't want to hear from." Then Diane appeared in his doorway with her careful look. "Renata Bellamy called the main line." Marcus looked up. "She wanted to thank you, and to ask you not to come back." A pause. She said she spent 6 years building something on her own, and she won't let her kids watch her accept handouts from a stranger no matter who he is. Marcus was quiet. He understood it, more than Renata knew. Okay. She doesn't want me back. I won't go. He turned to his screen. But find out what time Cora gets out of school. Diane wrote it down without another word. That evening his phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Cora. I got your number from the card. Is your chair fixed? Cora B. He stared at it. It's fixed. How's your mother? 4 minutes later. Better. She still says you shouldn't come back. I know. I'm not going to. A pause. Then, but you're still going to help, aren't you? He looked at those words on the screen. The city spread below his window. The whole machine of his life humming around him. Yes, he typed. Why? He thought about Renata's pride, Cora's tin can, Jasper's truck, the eviction notice, his own shoebox under his bed at 9 years old, filling with quarters because he'd understood early that the absence of money was the source of nearly everything that hurt, because some debts don't get paid with money. A long pause on her end. That makes sense. Then, are you a good man, Mr. Whitfield? No one had asked him that. Not with that directness, not with that little agenda. He typed and deleted and typed again. I'm trying to be. Her response came immediately. Okay. He put the phone down, got back to work. But Cora's question sat inside his chest like a small, clean stone, and it stayed there all night. Are you a good man? He was still deciding. Cora Bellamy was precise about money. Her second-grade teacher had mentioned it at the last parent conference. She could add faster than the classroom iPad, make change before adults finished counting on their fingers. The gift came from practice, from a childhood that had required counting. On Friday morning, 3 days after Marcus came to North Loomis, Cora sat at the kitchen table with her tin can and a sheet of notebook paper. This was her system. Every Friday, she counted what was in the can and listed what it could or could not buy. She'd started 4 months ago when she understood her mother was scared about something she wasn't saying aloud. This week, $6.40. She wrote, Tylenol for Mama, $4.99. Then, left, $1.41. She tapped her pencil on the page. The doctor had come, Dr. Park, who smelled like lavender, and left medicine that cost nothing because Mr. Whitfield had paid, which meant the Tylenol money could become something else. She wrote, bread, $2.49, then scratched it out. The delivery Tuesday had included so much food that Jasper had stood in the kitchen touching cans one by one, like they might disappear. Cora had been more careful. Things that arrived unexpectedly could leave the same way. Her mother appeared in the doorway, clearer-eyed than 3 days ago. She sat across from Cora, read the notebook paper. Her face did something complicated. She put her hand over Cora's. Baby. The word that carried everything she couldn't put in sentences. Cora looked up. Are we going to have to leave the apartment? A small pause, the kind children always notice, always file away as the thing the grown-up isn't saying yet. We're working on it. Mr. Whitfield might help. He's already done more than he should. Cora turned her pencil in her fingers. Why does it bother you when people help? Renata looked at her daughter for a long moment. Because I grew up watching people who needed help start to depend on it. Stop believing they could do things on their own. She paused. I don't want that for us. Cora absorbed this. Then, but he didn't help because he thought we couldn't do it ourselves. He helped because I helped him first. That's different. A beat. Isn't it? Renata opened her mouth. Closed it. It's an exchange, Cora said simply. Not charity. The apartment was quiet. Outside, a truck went past. Jasper stirred behind the bedroom door. Renata looked at her daughter and felt the enormous, terrifying love that made her brave and kept her up at night in equal measure. "How did you get so smart?" Cora shrugged with one shoulder. "I count things," and went back to her notebook. Marcus received her text that afternoon. "Mama is better. Are you still helping even though she said not to?" He typed, carefully, "Good." Then, after a moment, "Mr. Whitfield, you should know she cried last night. She thought we were asleep, but I heard her." He set the phone down slowly, pressed his hand flat on the desk. "Thank you for telling me. I just thought you should know," she wrote. "Sometimes people act strong, and that's the only way you can tell they're actually scared." He read that twice. 3 times. Something had begun in that intersection that was not going to stop until it reached wherever it was going. He didn't know yet how far that was. The housing attorney Marcus hired was named Gerald Foss, white-haired, 63, built like a former offensive lineman who saw no reason to change. He had spent 22 years making it legally expensive to displace small families. He won more than he lost. He enjoyed his work. He called Monday at 7:45. "The eviction is pretextual," he said. "One noise complaint from July. The neighbor who filed it already moved out." A pause. "This is displacement. 6 families in that building, same situation. The company's buying up the whole block. They want it clear by spring." Marcus hadn't expected 6 families. "We file an emergency motion today," Gerald continued. "And we connect the 6 families. A pattern of discrimination is a far bigger hammer than individual cases. Renata doesn't know I hired you. Then you've got a situation, Mr. Whitfield." He knew. While Gerald met Renata in the building's community room, he always made clients feel on their own ground. Marcus sat across from Priya, his head of research, in a conference room on the 38th floor. Priya was meticulous in a way that occasionally made people uncomfortable. She'd been asked to do routine background research on the Bellamy family. What she found was not routine. She slid a printed page across the table. A scanned company directory, 17 years old. 2 rows of employees at a distribution facility in Wicker Park. Third from the left, back row, a young woman, early 20s, dark hair, bright eyes. Beneath the photo, Renata Alvarez, now Bellamy. Marcus looked at the photograph for a long time. "She worked for us," he said. 14 months. "Your distribution center." "She was laid off when the facility closed." Priya's voice was careful. "You would have been 13. 13. He didn't look away from the photo. "She was 19. The closure affected about 240 people. Your father's division, before you took over." His father's division. The part of the company Marcus had inherited at 22 and spent a decade trying to repair. Decisions made before he was old enough to stop them. He sat very still. Renata Bellamy, who was raising 2 children alone in a building with a broken elevator and an eviction notice, who had turned him away at the door, who looked at him with those fierce, exhausted eyes, had once been a 19-year-old woman who worked for his family's company, and his family's company had let her go. He thought about Cora's question. "Are you a good man?" He thought about his own answer. "Does she know?" he said. "I don't think so. She wouldn't have known the family name behind the company. Don't tell her." He looked at the window. "Not yet." His phone rang. "Gerald." "She signed the papers. We file this afternoon." A pause. "But she asked who's paying for this. I said an anonymous benefactor. She sat with that 30 seconds, then said, 'Tell them I grew up around people who do things for free. It always costs more in the end. What do they expect in return?'" Marcus pressed his hand against the glass. "Tell her I expect nothing. She won't believe that. I know." A beat. "Marcus, who is this woman to you?" He looked out at the city below, at everything spread across it, at every street that didn't know what it contained. "Someone I owe a debt to," he said, "and didn't know it until now." He hung up. Somewhere in this city, Gerald Foss was filing papers that bought the Bellamy family more time. That would have to be enough. For now. Gerald called Wednesday with news. The emergency motion had been accepted. A hearing in 11 days. Which meant 11 days before a judge decided whether Renata Bellamy and her children stayed or went. Marcus took the call at his window, looking out at Chicago, and felt two things at once: relief that the clock had paused, and the slow pressure of everything he still hadn't said. He hadn't told Renata about the directory, about the 19-year-old woman in the back row of a company photograph who had become, 17 years later, the woman fighting to keep her home on North Loomis Street. He told himself he was waiting for the right moment. He was good at many things. He was less good at recognizing when he was lying to himself. Cora texted that afternoon. "Mama got dressed today. She made oatmeal." "That's a good sign," he wrote back. "She's looking for work again. She was a bookkeeper before. She says numbers are the one thing nobody can take from you." He read that twice. Thought about Cora at the kitchen table with her notebook and tin can. Thought about where that particular gift had come from. "She's right about that," he typed. She applied to 3 places today. One already said no. One no isn't the end. A pause. Then, "I know. I just wanted someone else to know it happened. So it wasn't just us knowing." He set the phone down, picked it up again. Put it down. There was a particular loneliness in what Cora had described. The loneliness of hard things that happen inside a family and go unseen by the rest of the world. He had grown up fluent in that silence. He called Gerald. "The other 5 families in the building, do they all have representation?" 2 have a legal aid contact. The other 3 are alone. "Get them all under the same umbrella. My retainer covers it." A pause. "That's significant, Marcus." "I know." He looked at the city. "Get them covered." He hung up and opened a new document. Began typing. Somewhere on North Loomis, a woman good with numbers was making oatmeal and sending out applications and holding a family together with both hands. 11 days. He had work to do. She figured it out on a Thursday. Not from anything Marcus said. From the name on the legal filing. Gerald had sent over the motion to join all 6 cases, and in the header, in small professional print, was the funding entity. Whitfield Community Initiative, established 2019. She read it 3 times, sat down at the kitchen table, looked at the wall. She called the number on his card. He answered on the 2nd ring. "Renata, you lied to me." Calm, controlled. "I didn't lie. You let me believe it was anonymous. I didn't tell you who it was. Don't be clever with me. I'm not one of your board meetings." Silence. The real kind. "You're right," he said. "I should have told you." "Why didn't you?" "Because I knew you'd refuse." "I'm refusing now." "Renata, I've spent 6 years making sure my children understand that we stand on our own." Her voice had gone low. "And now Cora is texting you, and you know things about my life that I didn't give you. She told me you cried." The kitchen went very quiet. She opened her eyes, looked at the refrigerator, at Jasper's red handprint on paper, fingers spread wide, like he was reaching for something. "She shouldn't be managing things like that," Renata said. "She's 7. "She's not worried," he said carefully. "She just pays attention." A pause. Then, "I want to meet. In person." "Tell me what you actually expect from all of this." "Okay. Not at my apartment. Wherever you want." She named the coffee shop 3 blocks from North Loomis, round tables, a window onto the street, the place where she'd sat many afternoons doing the math of her life. "Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. I'll be there." She hung up, stayed at the table, looked at the crayon suns on the refrigerator, and the yellow house Cora drew over and over, Nothing like their apartment, but drawn anyway, as if repetition could make it real. Renata Bellamy was not a woman who frightened easily, but she was frightened now. Not of Marcus, not of the eviction, not of any single thing she could name. She was frightened of hope, of what it cost when it was wrong. She had been wrong about hope before. He was already there when she arrived, seated at the window table, angled so his back wasn't to the door. She noticed that. The habit of a man who navigated spaces before entering them. She sat across from him and didn't order anything. "You want to know what I expect," he said. "I want to know who you think you are, and why this family." Cora pushed my wheelchair across an intersection when every adult walked past. "I want to make sure that kind of person doesn't get swallowed by a situation she didn't create." That's a nice answer. It's the true one. It's not complete. She leaned back. People don't hire housing attorneys over a moment of kindness. There's something else. He held her gaze. Said nothing. "I looked up your company," she said. "Your father started it. You took it over at 22. A pause. "The West Side distribution facility closed the year you were 13. That was his operation." Something shifted in his expression. Just slightly. "Yes," he said. "I grew up knowing people who worked there," she said. "The closure hit the neighborhood hard." He set both hands flat on the table. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. "I should have told you before now." And he did. He told her about Priya, and the photograph, and the company directory, about the name printed beneath a back row employee 17 years ago. He told her straight, without softening it. When he finished, the coffee shop hummed around them. Someone ground beans behind the counter. A bus passed the window. "You knew when you came to my door," she said. "I found out 2 days after." And didn't say anything. "No." She looked at the street. A woman with a stroller, 2 old men on a bench. Ordinary life, proceeding without them. "How old was I?" she said quietly. "In the photo." 19. She nodded. "I needed that job. My mother was sick. I was sending money home." A pause. "When the facility closed, they gave us 2 weeks and a paper with some phone numbers." Marcus said nothing. He understood the difference between speaking and filling silence. "I'm not angry at you," she said finally. "You were 13. My family." "I know." She turned back to him. "I know it wasn't you, but I'm not going to pretend it's nothing." She looked at him steadily. "If you're doing this because of guilt, I don't need that. My kids don't need it." "It's not guilt," he said. "It's recognition. I grew up 4 miles from here. My mother worked 2 jobs. I know what it looks like when someone holds everything together and is running out of hands." A pause. "I don't need anything from you. I just saw Cora, and I knew." Renata looked at him for a long time. "The hearing is in 8 days, she said finally. "Gerald says we're in a strong position." "What about the other families?" "All 6 are joined. Gerald filed this morning." She looked at her hands on the table. Then, "Don't lie to me again, even by leaving things out." "Okay. I mean it. So do I." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't trust. But it was a beginning. And beginnings, Renata had learned, were the most important thing to keep alive. 3 days before the hearing, Marcus received a call from a number he didn't recognize. A smooth voice. Older. The careful diction of someone accustomed to being listened to. "Mr. Whitfield. Douglas Crane. I represent Crane Voss Property Holdings. The management company." Marcus said nothing. Let the silence work. "We're aware of the legal action," Crane continued. "We'd like to propose a resolution before this goes before a judge. We'll withdraw all 6 eviction notices in exchange for dropping the action. The tenants receive a 5-year lease guarantee at current rates." Marcus turned it over. The way he turned over every number someone else had prepared. After 5 years, he said. A brief pause. Market rate renegotiation. He understood. 5 years, then displacement, just delayed, when the legal team was gone and the families were alone again. A solution designed to look like one. I'll consult with the families, he said. You'll have an answer in 48 hours. He called Gerald. Then he called Renata directly, her number, which Cora had given him. They offered a settlement, he said. I need you to hear it before I say anything else, because it's going to sound like good news. He explained everything, heard her breathe carefully. It's a delay, she said. Yes. Not a solution. No. Silence. Jasper said something in the background. Renata hushed him gently. What would you do? She asked. He hadn't expected that. Renata, I'm asking you. What would you do? He thought about it honestly. I'd fight, because I know what happens in year 5, and because 6 families deserve more than a countdown. I need to talk to the others, she said. Tonight. Can Gerald come? I'll make sure of it. 7 o'clock, the community room of 1180 North Loomis. 6 families around folding tables. Gerald at the front, Marcus to the side. Not leading. This was not his meeting. He watched Renata. She laid out the settlement, the hearing, the risks and odds, with the precision of someone accustomed to making numbers clear. She didn't tell people what to decide. She gave them what they needed to decide themselves. When she finished, Raymond from the 3rd floor, 40 years in the building, raised his hand. You trust this attorney? Gerald said. I've won 23 cases like this, lost 4. Raymond nodded. Then we fight. One by one, the others agreed. Afterward, in the hallway, Renata stopped Marcus before he reached the elevator. There's something I need to tell you, she said, quieter than he'd heard her before. Okay. She looked at her hands, then at him. Cora's father. His name was Daniel Crane, Douglas Crane's son. Marcus went very still. We were together when I was 22. He knew about Cora. He chose not to be in her life. She paused. I didn't connect the name until tonight, until I saw it on Gerald's paperwork. The hallway was very quiet. Does Douglas Crane know? Marcus asked. About Cora? I don't know, but if he does. She stopped. Then the settlement offer might not be just business. Or it might be exactly that, Marcus said carefully. And he's hoping you won't look too closely. They looked at each other. Do you want me to find out? He asked. She pressed her lips together, looked at the faded paint, the old carpet, the water stain near the baseboard that had been there since the building was already old. Let the hearing happen first, she said. Then we'll decide. She walked back down the hall, then stopped, without turning. Marcus. Her voice carried in the empty corridor. Thank you. For tonight. He watched her go. He sat in the empty community room for a long time, turning over everything he now knew. Douglas Crane. A son named Daniel, who had walked away from a 7-year-old girl who kept a tin can and a ledger and pushed strangers across intersections. He thought about Cora's question one more time. Are you a good man? He thought. I don't know, but I know what a bad one looks like, and he was not going to let one win. The morning of the hearing, Cora woke up early. Renata found her at the kitchen table at 6:45 in her school uniform, with the tin can and the notebook paper. But when she looked at the page, it wasn't the usual list. At the top, in Cora's careful handwriting, things that are true. 1. We have not left. 2. Mama is better. 3. Jasper ate breakfast 3 days in a row. 4. Mr. Whitfield did not go away. 5. Today the judge will decide. Renata stood in the doorway and read it. She did not cry. She had done her crying in private, in the dark hours when the children were asleep. This morning she was clear. "Come here," she said. She held Cora, long enough to be real, short enough not to frighten her. Then let go. "Whatever happens today, we're going to be okay." Cora looked up with those clear, direct eyes. "I know," she said, with the certainty of someone who has run the numbers. The courtroom was smaller than Marcus expected for the weight of what it held. Gerald was meticulous. He presented the pattern of pretextual evictions, the timeline showing each notice filed within weeks of the company's block acquisition, communications proving the noise complaint came from a tenant already gone. He brought a housing expert, rental records, documentation the management company's attorney couldn't credibly answer. Marcus sat in the gallery, not at the table. This was not his name on the filing. He watched Renata. Dark blue blazer he'd never seen before. Hands flat on the table, back straight. She didn't look back at him. She didn't need to. By 11:15, the judge called a recess. In the hallway, Renata stood by the window with a cup of water she wasn't drinking. Marcus came beside her. "How do you think it went?" she asked. Gerald was prepared. "That's not what I asked." He looked at her. "I think it went well." She nodded. "Cora made a list this morning. Things that are true." A pause. "Number 4 was that you didn't go away." He looked at his hands. "I want you to know," Renata said quietly, "that I see what you've done. Not just the attorney and the groceries." She turned from the window. "You didn't make us feel like a project. A man like you could have, very easily." She paused. "You didn't." "I didn't want to," he said. "I know. That's the point." They stood together. The city visible through the glass, going on at its ordinary pace, indifferent and beautiful and entirely unaware. "I've decided something," Renata said. "What?" "Cora wants to see your office. She wants to see the view from 40 stories. Almost a smile. "Saturday, 10 o'clock. If that's all right." "I'll have the whole morning clear," he said. The recess ended. They went back inside. The judge took 12 minutes. The eviction notices were suspended pending full review. The pattern of filing was flagged for investigation. The management company was ordered to halt all displacement activity in the building for the duration, at minimum 18 months. Not a final victory, but solid. Real. 18 months in which no one was going anywhere. In the gallery, Raymond exhaled like a man who had held his breath for a very long time. A woman named Patricia, second floor, cried quietly. Others made phone calls. The ordinary business of relief. On the courthouse steps, in the October cold, Renata came to stand beside Marcus. 18 months, she said. A lot can happen in 18 months. "What are you planning?" She said it lightly. She was watching him. "Nothing you haven't agreed to," he said. She studied his face. Then looked at the street, the taxis and the lunch crowds and the whole indifferent machinery of a day that had no idea what had just happened on these steps. "Douglas Crane," she said quietly. "Are you going to do something?" "That depends on what you want." She was quiet. Running numbers of a different kind, the kind that had to do with damage and children and the long arithmetic of the past. "Cora doesn't know anything," she said. "About her father. She's 7. "I know. Let me think about it." "Take all the time you need." She pulled her blazer closer in the cold, looked at him one last time, those clear, fierce eyes that had been looking at hard things steadily for a very long time. "Saturday," she said. 10 o'clock. She walked down the steps. Marcus watched her go, head up, straight-backed, moving through the ordinary world like someone who had decided long ago that it would not stop for her. And that was fine. He stayed on the steps a moment longer. He thought about Cora's list, things that are true. He thought about what he would add if it were his. Number 1. Some people stop when everyone else walks past, and that changes everything. The city moved below. The clock kept running. And there was still one more thing, the largest thing, that nobody knew yet. But Saturday was coming, and some truths could only be told in person.